You are walking through a crowded street. Suddenly, someone falls to the ground. They are not moving. People around you stop. Some look, some whisper, some take out their phones, but nobody moves. Nobody calls for help. And you start thinking, someone else will do it. Maybe the person next to you already called. Maybe someone more qualified will step forward. Maybe this is not actually an emergency. So you wait, and everyone else waits too, until seconds become minutes, and a question remains. How can a crowd full of human beings become a place where nobody helps? Are people naturally selfish? Or is there something deeper happening inside our minds? Something that can make ordinary, caring people freeze when someone desperately needs them? This is known as the Bystander Effect, a psychological phenomenon that reveals one of the strangest contradictions of human behavior. Sometimes, the more people who are watching, the less likely anyone is to act. On the night of March 13th, 1964, in New York City, a young woman named Kitty Genovese was attacked while returning home. The event happened outside her apartment building in Queens. The next day, newspapers published a shocking story. They claimed that dozens of witnesses saw what happened, but nobody helped. The story became one of the most famous examples of human indifference. It created a terrifying image: a woman screaming for help, while a city full of people simply watched. For many years, the case was remembered as proof that modern society had become colder, that people could see suffering and choose to do nothing. But decades later, researchers discovered that the original media reports were heavily exaggerated. The number of witnesses who clearly understood what was happening was much smaller than originally claimed. Some people did attempt to respond. The situation was far more complicated than the simple story of 38 people watched and did nothing. However, something important came from this tragedy. Psychologists began asking a different question. Maybe people were not ignoring suffering because they didn't care. Maybe the human mind works differently when we are surrounded by others. Maybe being part of a crowd changes the way we make decisions. In the late 1960s, psychologists John Darley and Bibb Latané wanted to understand this mystery. They wondered, if someone needs help, does the presence of other people make us more likely to help, or less likely? Their prediction was surprising. They believed that having more witnesses might actually reduce the chance that any individual would intervene. Not because people become cruel, but because responsibility becomes divided, a phenomenon they called diffusion of responsibility. Think about a simple situation. You are walking alone and see someone collapse. Your brain immediately says, "I need to do something." There is nobody else. The responsibility belongs to you. But now, imagine the same situation happening in a crowded shopping mall. There are 50 people around. Your brain starts asking, why should I be the one? Maybe someone already called emergency services. Maybe someone else knows what to do. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the situation. The responsibility that felt personal suddenly becomes shared. And when responsibility belongs to everyone, sometimes it feels like it belongs to nobody. To test this idea, Darley and Latané created a series of experiments. In one famous study, university students participated in what they believed was a discussion through an intercom system. During the conversation, one participant appeared to have a seizure. The students were placed into different situations. Some believed they were the only person who heard the emergency. Others believed several other people were also listening. The result was fascinating. When participants believed they were alone, they were much more likely to report the emergency quickly. But when they believed other people were also aware, their response slowed down. The presence of others changed their behavior. The experiment revealed something uncomfortable. The biggest obstacle to helping someone may not always be a lack of compassion. Sometimes it is uncertainty. But responsibility is only one part of the story. There is another powerful force hiding inside crowds, something psychologists call pluralistic ignorance. It happens when people look at others to understand what is happening. Imagine you are sitting in a room. Suddenly, smoke begins entering from a corner. At first, you notice it, you become concerned, but then you look around. Everyone else seems calm. Nobody is standing up, nobody is leaving. Your brain starts creating an explanation. Maybe it is nothing. If nobody else is worried, maybe I shouldn't be either. But the strange thing is, everyone else may be thinking the exact same thing. Each person is looking at the others for information. And because everyone appears calm, everyone concludes there is no danger. The group creates a false sense of safety. This explains something important about human behavior. Most people imagine emergencies like this. Danger appears. People recognize it. People act. But real life is often different. The brain does not immediately jump into action. Instead, it goes through several hidden steps. First, is this actually an emergency? Second, is it my responsibility? Third, should I do something? And every second of hesitation creates another chance to do nothing. But here is where the story becomes even more interesting. Because the bystander effect does not mean humans are naturally selfish. In fact, many studies suggest something more complicated. People often want to help. They simply become trapped between different psychological pressures. The fear of making a mistake, the fear of looking foolish, the belief that someone else will act, and the invisible pressure to follow the behavior of the crowd. A person standing alone might become a hero. The same person surrounded by strangers might freeze, not because they changed, but because the situation changed. And this raises a disturbing question. If ordinary people can remain silent during an emergency, what happens when the entire society becomes the crowd? What happens when thousands or millions of people witness something wrong? Online, in public, or even in history? Can the same psychological forces that stop one person from helping also stop entire groups from taking action? And more importantly, is there a way to break free from the bystander effect? Because sometimes, the difference between tragedy and rescue depends on just one person deciding, I will be the first one to move, is much harder than it sounds. Because the human brain is not only trying to understand what is happening, it is also trying to protect us. Every social situation contains invisible rules. We learn them from childhood. Do not interrupt. Do not embarrass yourself. Do not overreact. Do not stand out. Most of the time, these rules help society function, but during an emergency, the same instincts can become dangerous because helping often requires doing something unusual. It requires breaking the silence, standing apart from the crowd, and accepting the possibility that everyone else might be wrong. One of the clearest examples of this happened far away from the laboratory. In 1988, a young woman named Kitty Genovese's case became a symbol of the bystander effect. But decades later, researchers discovered that the original story was not as simple as people believed. There was not a crowd of dozens of people calmly watching and refusing to help. The reality involved confusion, limited information, and people who did not fully understand what was happening. And this detail actually makes the story more important. Because the true lesson is not, people are heartless. The real lesson is, people often do not know what to do when a situation is unclear. And uncertainty can be powerful enough to stop action. This idea became even more relevant in the modern world. Because today, we are surrounded by more witnesses than ever before. But strangely, we may also be surrounded by more silence. The internet has created a new type of crowd, a digital crowd. Millions of people can watch the same event. They can see injustice. They can see someone asking for help. They can see a person in danger. But many people simply scroll past. Why? Because the same psychological mechanism still exists. Someone else will report it. Someone else will help. Someone else understands the situation better. A single person feels powerless. But when thousands of people are watching, everyone assumes someone else is responsible. Psychologists call this a modern version of diffusion of responsibility. The crowd is no longer standing together in one place. Instead, it exists across screens. A person might think, there are millions of people online. Surely someone will do something. But the uncomfortable truth is, everyone can think the same thing. And when everyone waits, nothing happens. However, history also shows the opposite. Sometimes one person can completely change the outcome. In 2017, on a subway platform in London, a man fell onto the tracks as a train approached. A stranger named Simon Brown jumped down and helped pull him away from danger. The situation was chaotic. People were shocked, but one person moved first, and that single action changed what everyone else did. Once someone broke the hesitation, others followed. This reveals another important psychological principle. Human behavior spreads. Just like fear can spread through a crowd, so can courage. Researchers studying emergencies discovered something fascinating. The first person who acts often becomes the person who defines the situation for everyone else. Before anyone moves, the crowd is uncertain. Everyone is asking, is this serious? Should we do something? Will someone else handle it? But when one person stands up and says, something is wrong, I need help, call emergency services, the uncertainty begins to disappear. The crowd suddenly has direction. One person's decision can transform a group of passive observers into active helpers. So how can we overcome the bystander effect? The first step is understanding that it exists, because many people imagine themselves as the type of person who would immediately help. They believe, if I saw someone in danger, I would act. But psychological research suggests that the situation can influence our behavior more than our personality. A kind person can hesitate. A brave person can freeze. A good person can remain silent, not because they lack morality, but because they are human. The second step is making responsibility personal. Instead of thinking, someone should help, change the sentence to, I should help. This small mental shift is extremely powerful. Instead of looking around for someone else to take responsibility, you become the person who takes responsibility. If you see someone collapse in public, do not simply shout, someone call an ambulance, because everyone may assume someone else will do it. Instead, point directly at a person. You in the blue jacket, call emergency services. You stay with this person. Specific responsibility creates action. The third step is learning to recognize uncertainty. Many emergencies do not look like emergencies at first. Someone crying alone, someone being followed, someone experiencing a medical problem, a person asking for help in a strange situation. Our brains often search for reasons not to act. Maybe they are okay. Maybe it is none of my business. Maybe I misunderstood. But sometimes, a small action is enough. You do not need to become a hero, you only need to interrupt the silence. Ask, are you okay? Do you need help? Should I call someone? A simple question can break the invisible wall created by the crowd. But the bystander effect is not only about emergencies. It reveals something much larger about human society. Throughout history, many major problems continued because people assumed someone else would solve them. Environmental issues, social injustice, public safety problems, even conflicts between nations. Large groups of people often wait for a leader, someone else, someone more powerful, someone more qualified. But change usually begins when ordinary individuals stop waiting. The world often celebrates heroes as if they are completely different from ordinary people. But many heroes are not born with extraordinary courage. They simply make one different choice in one important moment. They notice, they decide, they act. Before they move, they may feel the same fear as everyone else. The difference is that they do not allow uncertainty to make the decision for them. Perhaps the most surprising lesson of the bystander effect is this. The greatest danger is not always that people do not care. Sometimes people care deeply, but they are waiting for permission, waiting for someone else to move first, waiting for a signal that action is acceptable, and that signal can come from anyone, even you. Imagine that you are standing in a crowd. Someone needs help. Everyone is watching. For a moment, nobody moves. Then one person steps forward. One voice breaks the silence. One decision changes the direction of the entire group. That person does not need to be the strongest, the smartest, or the bravest. They only need to be the first. Because sometimes, the difference between a crowd that watches and a crowd that saves someone is just one person choosing not to look away. This is the mystery of the bystander effect. Not a story about bad people, but a story about human psychology. A reminder that our minds are powerful, but they can also deceive us. And sometimes, the most important choice we make is whether we remain a witness or become the person who acts.